The supply chopper was 3 hours late by the time it finally appeared through the North Sea mist. Standing on the Borealis platform's helipad, I zipped my weatherproof jacket higher against the biting wind and watched as the Bell 412 fought against the crosswinds. Standard procedure for us. Nothing out here ever arrived on time. 34 days into my final 6-month rotation. Just 5 more months of 12-hour shifts, deafening machinery, and the constant rocking of the rig before I could put a down payment on that little house in Nebraska. No ocean for miles, no constant thunder of waves hitting steel, just quiet. "Kramer, stop daydreaming and help with the offload," Frank Garrison's voice crackled through my radio. Frank was our rig manager, company man through and through, counting every bolt and bearing like it came from his personal bank account. I trudged across the main deck as the crew secured the cargo nets. The usual supplies were all there: replacement parts, food stores, medical supplies. Then something caught my eye. A large red shipping container being hoisted from the supply vessel that had arrived alongside the helicopter stood out like a sore thumb among our standard gray and blue equipment. "What's that?" I asked Rodriguez, who was checking items against the manifest. He shrugged. "Not on my list." I approached Frank, who was signing off on the delivery. "Frank, there's a red container coming aboard that's not on the manifest." Frank barely looked up. "Corporate probably forgot to update the paperwork. Happens all the time. But the rules say we do our jobs, Kramer." Frank's tone made it clear the conversation was over. "It's just some equipment. Have it secured on the main deck until we get clarification." I knew better than to push. In my 10 years working rigs, I'd learned that questioning management too much was a quick way to find yourself on the next chopper home. Still, something about that featureless red box set my teeth on edge. No markings, no shipping labels, nothing but flat, matte red metal. The container was placed on the starboard side of the main deck, and I went back to my regular maintenance rounds. The day finished without incident, and I turned into my cramped quarters just after 10 in the evening. I was drifting off when I felt it, more than heard it. A low, deep vibration that seemed to pulse through the metal frame of my bunk. It wasn't the normal hum of the rig's machinery. This was different, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. I sat up, disoriented. The fluorescent light above my bed flickered in perfect sync with the vibration. Off, on, off, on. I checked my watch, 2:17 in the morning. The sensation wasn't coming from below where the main generators ran. It was coming from the deck, from where that container sat. I pulled on my coveralls and boots, grabbing my flashlight. As I stepped into the corridor, the vibration stopped, and my light steadied. I waited, listening. Nothing but the familiar sounds of the rig. Had I dreamed it? 12-hour shifts could do that to you, blur the line between being awake and asleep. I went back to my quarters and checked the electrical panel. Everything looked normal. Probably just a power surge, I told myself, though it felt thin. I'll run checks on the grid tomorrow. I lay back down, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about that container. In my decade offshore, I'd never seen supply handling that sloppy. Every item that came aboard was accounted for, especially these days. The vibration didn't return, but as I stared at the ceiling, the light flickered one more time, a single sharp pulse, and I could have sworn I felt a shift in the air, like the room got thicker for a second. Just a bad connection, I insisted. Nothing I couldn't fix with a wrench and some electrical tape. But as I finally drifted off, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that some things can't be fixed so easily, and some things shouldn't be fixed at all. Sleep? Forget it. My dreams were jagged shards of sound and shape, nonsensical but unsettling. When the alarm ripped me awake at 6 o'clock in the morning, I felt like heavy machinery had rolled right over me. The fluorescent lights above sputtered erratically as I pulled on my coveralls. I tapped the light panel with my knuckle, force of habit from years of wrestling with temperamental gear. The light steadied, but only for a moment before starting its uneven pulse again. Huh, that's new, I muttered, noting it down mentally for a circuit check later. By noon, it wasn't just my quarters. Reports of electrical gremlins flooded in from everywhere. Lights flickered in the mess hall. Monitors in the control room reset without cause. The backup generator kept cycling on and off, even though the power levels seemed fine. Frank's voice spat through the intercom, crackling with static. "Kramer, get your ass down to level C. Communications is stone cold dead." When I got there, Frank was practically breathing down the neck of the comms officer, micromanaging as usual. "About time," he snapped. "Fix it. We've been cut off for 20 minutes. I pulled out my diagnostic tablet and ran tests. Nothing added up. Power flowed, connections were solid, but the whole system refused to wake up. "I'm not seeing the problem," I admitted after half an hour of crawling through diagnostics. "It's like something's jamming the signal, but..." "But what?" Frank demanded. I hesitated. But there's no damn source I can find." Frank's face flushed crimson. "That's not a solution, Kramer. I need answers, not ghost stories." As I worked, I noticed other maintenance crews wrestling similar frustrations across the platform. Gear that should have worked flawlessly refused. Rock-solid systems developed sudden, inexplicable faults. Dinner in the mess hall was tense. Conversation was minimal. Every stutter of the overhead lights jerked heads upwards. I finished quickly and headed for my rack. Passing the main deck, I paused. The red container sat there bathed in the fading daylight, looking utterly innocent. No vibration hummed from it now. No sound at all. Just a massive red block that didn't reflect the dying light. It seemed to absorb it. That silence was infinitely worse than last night's strange pulse. I woke up running. My heart slammed against my ribs as I shot up in bed, gasping. Sweat plastered the sheets to my skin, tangled around my legs like chains. The dream had been terrifyingly real. I was racing through the platform's maintenance corridors, my corridors, but they were all wrong. Stretched longer, deeper shadows. Familiar pathways twisted into nonsensical knots, and something pursued me. Not footsteps, more like a pressurized wave of air surging through the passages, hunting. Pure animal terror. I'd never felt anything like it. The clock read 3:24. Sleep was impossible now. I dressed and trudged towards the mess hall for coffee. The skeleton night crew should have been there, keeping the platform ticking over. As I neared, I caught hushed voices. Bobby Nash, one of the green deckhands, was talking to Hendricks, his voice trembling. Like the corridors kept shifting, you know? Like they weren't the same. And something was chasing me. Didn't see it. Felt it coming. Like pressure building in the air. I froze just outside the door. "Jesus, kid, just a nightmare," Hendricks answered, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, man, this was different. Never had a dream feel so real before. It felt like you were actually being hunted," I said, stepping into the room. Bobby's head whipped around, eyes wide, pale. His hands shook slightly around his coffee mug. "Yeah, exactly like that." Hendricks looked back and forth between us. "Don't tell me you served up the same nightmare special, Kramer. That's a little too much Twilight Zone for me." "The maintenance corridors," I said, watching Bobby closely, "kept changing, getting longer." Bobby's mug clattered against the table. "How'd you know that?" A chill shot through me, unrelated to the rig's constant cool air. The engineer part of my brain scrabbled for explanations, coincidence, stress, shared worries, but something deeper, colder, knew better. "I think we need to talk about that container," I said quietly. The mess hall lights flickered, once, twice, then died completely, plunging us into blackness. When they snapped back on seconds later, Bobby stared at me. His eyes held the shattered look of someone who'd glimpsed too much. "It's not going to stop, is it?" he whispered. I thought about the silent container on the deck above. I thought about that impossible pressure in my dream, patient and utterly inhuman. "No," I said, "I don't think it is." The next morning, the mess hall buzzed with hushed conversations. Crew members huddled in tight groups, faces drawn and eyes bloodshot. Lack of sleep was becoming a problem for all of us. Bobby Nash sat with 3 other deckhands, repeatedly looking my way, then quickly glancing away when our eyes met. Our shared nightmare had created an uncomfortable bond neither of us wanted to face. Samira Iqbal, our medic, slid onto the bench across from me. 7 crew members came to the infirmary last night, she said quietly, all with the same complaint. My stomach tightened. Nightmares? Not just nightmares. The same nightmare. She leaned forward. Being hunted through the corridors by something they couldn't see. Just a pressure in the air. How is that possible? It's not. Samira's calm, professional attitude was cracking. Mass hysteria needs a trigger, something to plant the idea, but some of these men don't even talk to each other, work different shifts. Frank Garrison's voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Attention all crew. Production targets for yesterday were missed by 18%. This is unacceptable. All shifts will continue as scheduled. Any crew member found away from their assigned station will face disciplinary action." The room fell silent. Frank had never used the announcement system to threaten us about work before. "Something's wrong with him," Samira whispered. "He refused an exam this morning. Said he hasn't been sleeping, but it's more than that. He's different." By noon, things had gotten worse. Rodney Martinez, a drill operator, approached me while I was replacing a pressure gauge. "You're having them too, right? The dreams?" His voice shook. I nodded. "It's more than half the crew now." He wiped sweat from his brow despite the cold. "And it's not just at night anymore. Cooper swears he saw something moving in the machinery room. Nothing there when he turned, but he felt it. Watching." "We need to talk to Frank," I said. Rodney's laugh was empty. "Good luck. Jeffries tried an hour ago. Frank threatened to fire him for spreading hysteria." That afternoon, Frank called an emergency meeting on the main deck. We gathered in the shadow of the red container, which now seemed to swallow the sunlight instead of reflecting it. I noticed how the crew kept their distance, forming a wide semicircle away from it. "Production has stopped completely," Frank barked. "We are professionals, not children afraid of the dark. I've heard rumors are spreading about nightmares and seeing things. This stops now." Bobby stepped forward. "But sir, we're all having the same—" "Enough!" Frank slammed his clipboard down. "This platform operates on facts, not ghost stories. The next person to mention these dreams will be on the next helicopter back to shore. Fired." His eyes scanned the crowd, landing on me. "And understand this perfectly. Nobody goes near this container. It's company property waiting to be handled." "It's not even on the manifest," I found myself saying. Frank's expression hardened. "That's not your job, Kramer." As the crew cleared out, I noticed something unsettling. When Frank turned back toward the container, his expression changed, just for a second, from anger to what looked like respect or terror. That night, the dreams got stronger. People reported waking to find their rooms messed up. Things moved, personal stuff gone. The Borealis, once known for smooth operations, was falling apart. 3 men didn't show for their shift. We found them squeezed into a storage closet, whispering to each other, refusing to return to work. I was checking the electrical panel on C deck when the lights flickered wildly. In the brief darkness, I felt a definite cold spot pass behind me. I spun around, finding only empty hallway, but I knew I wasn't alone. All day reports poured in from across the rig. Cooper refused to enter the machinery room by himself. 2 roughnecks left their posts after seeing weird movements at the edges of their site. Even the toughest old-timers jumped at shadows. The rig was changing. Metal hallways that once felt safe now seemed to stretch and squeeze. Known paths became confusing, and always that feeling of being watched, the exact dread from the nightmare, stuck with us in broad daylight. "We need to do something about that container," I told Samira as we hunched in a quiet corner of the mess hall. "Whatever this is, it started when that thing arrived." "Frank won't let anyone near it," she answered, her fingers nervously tracing her coffee mug's edge. "Then we don't tell Frank?" I leaned closer. "This isn't about missed work goals anymore. Something is hunting us." The overhead lights dimmed, then flared to a blinding level before returning to normal. In that sudden flash, I saw something in the corner of the room, a darker patch of shadow that slid against the light. Not with it. Samira had seen it too. Her hand gripped my arm tight. "Did you?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "It's not inside the container anymore. It never was." The weight of this realization settled over us like a shroud. The red container wasn't a prison or a vessel, it was a doorway. And whatever had come through that doorway was now loose on the Borealis. "We need to tell Frank," Samira said, though her voice lacked conviction. "And tell him what exactly?" I asked. "That his precious container brought something invisible onto the rig? He'll have us sedated faster than Bobby." The mention of Bobby Nash sent a chill through me. The young deckhand had been the first to break just hours earlier. I'd been on the lower deck when his screams cut through the constant mechanical drone of the rig. By the time I reached the mess hall, 4 men were holding him down as he thrashed wildly, eyes bulging with terror. "It's in the vents!" he'd screamed, foam flecking the corners of his mouth. "It's watching us! Always watching us!" Samira had no choice but to sedate him. Bobby now lay unconscious in the medical bay, the first casualty of whatever nightmare was unfolding around us. The corridor lights flickered, seeming to echo my thoughts. "The comms," I said suddenly. "If we can't convince Frank, maybe we can call for an emergency evacuation." Samira nodded, and we made our way to the communications room on C deck. The familiar hum of electronics was gone. The main console screen showed only darkness. "How long has it been dead?" Samira asked. I checked the log. Systems logged a complete failure 8 hours ago. No one reported it. "How is that possible? Frank does comms checks like clockwork." Before I could answer, the rig's foghorn blared out, deafening and sudden. We both jumped. Through the window, clear skies and calm seas stretched out. Nothing that should trigger the automated system. The horn cut off abruptly, leaving behind unnerving quiet. "That's the third time all day," Samira whispered. "It's been sounding off randomly since morning." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The rig's systems, lights, comms, warnings, were being twisted one by one. Not failing, responding to something else, something not human. I spent hours checking every system I could reach. Every test said the same thing. Nothing mechanically wrong with the Borealis. The systems worked perfectly. They just weren't taking orders from us anymore. By evening, the mood on the rig had shifted from uneasy to full-blown dread. Crew moved in pairs, flinching at shadows. Nobody talked about the dreams now. We didn't need to. The same presence we felt while sleeping now hung thick in the air while we were awake. I was alone in the pump room on D-deck when it came. The steady thrumming of machines had been a small comfort, proof something still worked. I was adjusting a pressure valve when the lights went dead. Not flickering this time, total blackness. My flashlight clicked on, muscle memory from years in hazardous spaces, but the beam barely pushed back the dark like the shadows were swallowing it. Then I felt it. A pressure in the air, not physical, yet heavy. A cold like the deepest ocean trench had seeped inside. Exactly the hunting feel from the nightmare. Something ancient and patient seeing you. I froze. My breath fogged in front of me, even though the pump room was climate-controlled to exactly 68 degrees. The pressure grew, pushing against my skin, my eyes, my mind. Right then, I understood utterly. No ghost, no hallucination. This was what rode in with the container. This had waited for this lonely place to show itself. I ran, pride, courage, training, gone in raw terror. I slammed through the door and didn't slow until I hit the upper deck, gasping the open air. The red container sat where it landed, silent and ordinary in the dying light. Now I saw it true. Not the source, just its gateway. This thing hadn't been contained. It just got a ride. Whatever came aboard was already loose, moving free through the Borealis. In the air we breathed, the metal underfoot, the gaps between seconds. With comms silenced, we were stranded alone with it, 200 miles from shore. Then the foghorn screamed again. Lights across the whole platform blinked out in a chain. In the sudden dark, Bobby Nash's drugged screams kicked up from medical bay, faint but piercing. And I knew, we all knew, the hunt was starting now. I stood there in complete darkness. Every light was dead across the rig. My breath hitched in my throat, while Bobby's screams echoed down the corridors, mixing with the foghorn's dying moan as the backup generators failed. "We can't just stand here," I whispered to myself, leaning against the wall for balance. Footsteps pounded down the metal hallway, getting louder. A flashlight beam sliced through the black, lighting up Samira's terrified face. "Alan," she gasped, struggling for air. "It's spreading. 3 more crew members are showing the same symptoms. Peters is hallucinating in his cabin. Dawson can't stop sobbing. Rodriguez swears something's touching him." "How many of us are still sane?" I asked. "Maybe 7, counting us." Her voice shook. "What the hell is happening out here?" The flashlight flickered. For a split second, I saw something shift in the shadows behind her, less like a person, more like heat rippling off hot pavement. "It's the red container," I said, the truth hitting me hard. "That thing inside it? It's coming for us now." Samira gave a slow nod. "So what do we do?" "Get rid of it, shove it over the side." She stared at me. "You really think that'll help?" "I don't know, but it beats waiting around to die." We pushed through pitch-black hallways, gathering anyone still thinking straight. Jones, the assistant driller, Way from electrical, Patel, a young roughneck. Fear hung thick around them, but they were ready to try anything. Outside, the storm was hitting hard. Rain slashed sideways across the deck as wind screamed through the metal beams. Lightning flashes made the red container glow like a beating heart. "We'll need the crane," Jones yelled over the gale. "Power's gone," Way shot back. "We'll have to muscle it." Patel eyed the giant container, doubtful. "That beast must weigh 10 tons. "We try anyway," I said, already moving toward it. "Stop where you are!" Frank's voice cut through the noise. He stormed out from a doorway, flashlight in hand, his face twisted with wild rage. "That container stays put! That's company property!" "Frank, people are dying in there," Samira pleaded. "It's mass panic, nothing else." But his eyes were wrong, wide and glassy as a doll's. "Nobody touches that box. That's an order." "Your orders don't mean squat anymore," I said, closing in on the container. Frank lunged. His fist smashed my jaw, knocking me flat on the soaked deck. The others grabbed for him, but he fought like a cornered animal, strength pouring out of him like he'd been possessed. "It stays!" he shrieked, his voice almost not human. "It needs to stay!" Samira pulled me up. Blood trickled from my busted lip. "Now!" I barked. We pressed our shoulders against the icy steel. That hunk of metal shouldn't have budged, not with 5 of us shoving. But it slid across the deck like it weighed nothing, like it wanted off this rig. Frank broke loose from Jones and charged again. Patel tackled him mid-sprint, both men crashing down in a wet tangle. "Don't stop pushing," I yelled. The container scraped the platform's edge. One last heave tipped it over. It plunged into the churning sea below with a thunderous splash, then vanished, swallowed whole. For a heartbeat, everything went quiet. Even the storm held its breath. Then every remaining source of light, emergency bulbs, flashlights, every tiny LED on our gear blinked out at once. Absolute darkness. "Did it work?" Way whispered beside me. The answer came as a wave of cold, deeper than a North Sea winter, colder than anything natural. It froze the air in my lungs. The pressure from our nightmares, that hunted feeling, settled over the entire rig, not coming from one spot anymore, coming from everywhere. Frank started laughing from the deck, a low, jagged noise like rocks grinding together. "You damned fools," he choked out. "It wasn't trapped inside. The box was focusing it, anchoring it. And now—" He went silent. A new sound cut through the dark. Footsteps, slow, steady, coming from the hallway leading back indoors. Then another set from the opposite side of the deck. Then another, and another, closing in from every direction. We huddled together, 5 souls stranded on a shrinking raft of safety, 200 miles from shore. The footsteps prowled closer, took their time, never rushed. Whatever hunted us now knew we had nowhere left to run.